Public lands belong to everyone, but not everyone can get to them. And in winter, that gap gets even wider. Some folks can drive to the trailhead, gear up, and head out without thinking twice. For others, it's not that simple. Maybe it's finding somewhere to park. Maybe it's the cost of gear. Maybe it's not knowing what's safe out there. Those are real barriers, and they keep people away from places that are supposed to belong to all of us. But that's starting to change. Across the country, organisations are working to open that door through new partnerships, community programmes, and rethinking what access really means. Because access isn't just about getting people outside. When someone truly connects with a wild place, they start to care about it. And the stronger that relationship gets between people and wild places, the better chance those places have of sticking around.
Welcome back to Season 2 of Trailbreak Radio, the Winter Wildlands Alliance podcast. I'm Annika Williams.
And I'm Emily Scott.
This season is an 8-part series featuring recorded conversations from Winter Wildlands Alliance's 11th Biennial Grassroots Advocacy Conference, held September 2025 at the University of Washington's Pack Forest near Mount Rainier.
And thanks to our conference sponsors, we're able to share these conversations beyond the room.
What I like about this panel is that it starts with something really concrete. Parking, trailheads, gear, just physically getting to the snow. And then it opens up into a much bigger conversation about who actually gets to be a part of these experiences in the first place.
Right. It also explores who's been left out, sometimes by cost, by culture, and sometimes by systems that were never really built for everyone in mind. If we want more people to care about public lands, we have to make it possible for more people to actually experience them in the first place. Access isn't just a moment. It's what shapes whether someone comes back, builds a relationship with a place, and ultimately feels invested in it.
In this panel, you'll hear from Cal Smith with Climbers of Color, Megan Fiske from Winter Wildlands Alliance, Will Rusak of the Cascade Backcountry Alliance, and Anthony Cupaiolo from the Tahoe Backcountry Alliance. The conversation is moderated by Snow School Director Carrie McClay.
This is a conversation about the real challenges and the creative solutions for making winter access more possible for more people, and what's at stake if we don't. Because who gets access today shapes who fights for these places tomorrow. And with that, let's dive in. Listen while you're on your lunch break, tackling some chores, or resting after your latest winter adventure. And tune in for more conversations to come.
Hi, everyone. I am Carrie McClay, National Snow School Director with the Winter Wildlands Alliance. Welcome to our Sustainable Winter Access for All panel. We are talking about everything here from those pesky parking lots at trailheads for backcountry skiing to equity issues, complicated equity issues around experiencing winter wildlands. This is a big topic, and so we've got a big panel, and I am thankful for that. It's an experienced one as well, and we're going to do the kind of classic arc here from talking about challenges and the barriers, and then move into ideas around solutions and innovations. But I don't really think this conversation works without kind of immediately broadening the perspective here, and so I want to give Megan and Will and Anthony and Cal a chance to introduce themselves. We'll say who you are, where you are, and why you're on this panel, or why you think you're on this panel. I don't think any of us really know, but for sure.
Now I'm on. All right, hey everybody. I'm Megan Fiske, and I am the California Stewardship Manager for Winter Wildlands Alliance. I'm also starting my 4th season as the backcountry ambassador on the Stanislaus National Forest for Winter Wildlands Alliance. And part of why I'm on this panel is because I'm working on these issues locally on the Stanislaus as an ambassador, but also as our stewardship manager. And I am on the Stanislaus. I'm in Sonora, where I was born and raised. So I'm really grateful to be able to be doing this work in the place that I grew up and fell in love with the snow and the mountains.
Hey, my name's Will Russick. I live in North Bend, Washington, which is about an hour and a half north of here, close to Trevor and Scott and some other folks. And I'm on the board of directors of the Cascade Backcountry Alliance, which is a relatively young nonprofit that works on improving and maintaining backcountry access for winter travelers here in Washington and the Cascades. Originally, I'm from the East Coast, I'm from Connecticut, so avalanche terrain is not really a thing out there. So my education happened in Colorado and then in Washington, where I've been the last almost 10 years now. So I'm here, I think, mostly to learn and also to provide a local context for some of our access issues right here in Washington.
We'll see if this one's on. Is that on? How about now? Okay, hi. I'm Anthony Cupaello. I'm Executive Director of Tahoe Backcountry Alliance. TBA is celebrating our 10th anniversary this year, and we are still a relatively small, scrappy nonprofit, one part-time employee, but a really active board, and the board has been fantastic. We were founded 10 years ago. One of our co-founders was on the last panel. Did Dave step out, right, Cole? But Dave is one of our co-founders, and we were founded really specifically, I would say, around infrastructure access issues for backcountry skiers and snowboarders. And that's still a big part of what we do. But we've evolved specifically, I would say, over the last few years and are trying to grapple with a lot of equitable access issues as well. And we'll be touching on some of those in this panel.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kyle Smith. I come from the Grand Ronde, Lower Cowlitz, and Yakima tribal nations. So just 2 to the west and to the east of here, and then 1 down in Oregon. I'm here wearing my hat as the Director of Winter Programming at Climbers of Color. Our mission is to, I have to read it, it's a little lengthy, to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in climbing, mountaineering, winter recreation by developing leaders of color. To accomplish this mission, we provide decolonial mentorship, technical training, and access to key resources, including gear and scholarships.
Thanks, everybody. I'm really honored to have you all here and honored to be a part of this conversation. We got some great experience and perspective. Yesterday, we heard a lot about the recreation boom and some of the challenges, issues, problems around so many people now out recreating on public lands. And at the same time, public lands belong to all of us. And there are many people who have significant barriers, especially in the wintertime, to experiencing these places. And for me, as a snow school director, something that I see every year, I find myself standing at one of our snow school sites outside of a lodge or Nordic Center, not unlike this, and talking with a group of kids. We're standing on snowshoes. There's a teacher, a couple parent chaperones, and it's everybody's first time on snowshoes. For some of our participants, it's their first time ever in the mountains in the wintertime on snow. And I think those experiences, we've also heard over the last couple of days, just conversations in between and in presentations, those experiences, direct experiences in these places, meaningful experiences in the outdoors are why so many of us are inspired to care for these places and work to protect these places. And so I want to set that as the foundation here. As amid all the chaos and the uncertainty that we're experiencing, how can we continue to find ways to connect our communities to these places? And so my first question is for you, Cal. You've worked as a guide and you've taught courses with climbers of color. and you're a backcountry skier. And I'm just wondering, as we go in and like check in with each community here, what are you seeing in terms of like who's missing out on experiencing their winter wildlands in your community?
Definitely tribal members. I think, in my experience, has been primarily as an area instructor in the winter, and with that, the beginner base is, I think, overtly alienated, primarily due to the pedagogy that the Avalanche education system is built on. It is very knowledgeable and robust and very wealthy with knowledge and amazing instructors, but it suffers from this bifurcation that we see in other sciences of separating indigenous ways of knowing and just a less academic way of describing this natural world that we all come from, right? And so I think to directly answer like who's missing, it's like, I think people are told that they have to have like some X amount of like descriptive knowledge to be out in the winter to recreate safely, which is partially true. But the other truth to this is that everyone who recreates in the winter we all have sensatory skills to describe our natural environment. And that is something that the pedagogy really needs to embrace more, I would say, to make it feel more inclusive.
Thanks for that. I think we'll just go down the line here and just kind of check in by community. There's definitely been a lot of conversation, just around the lunch table and in between here about parking and plowing as frustrations. And Anthony, I know that at Tahoe Backcountry Alliance, you all have put in significant resources and strategy around improving that for the Tahoe community. Do you see that as the main barriers right now for folks, or is it more expansive than that?
Yeah, it's definitely more expansive, but I'll touch on that because I think it is a significant barrier. I think parking can be access, and when you don't have parking at a trailhead or you don't have trailheads that even exist for public lands, then you have limited access. So I can speak specifically to our region. We have a significant amount of public land. If you go on to TBA's website, we have an access zone map, and it's pretty expansive. And we don't give away all the secrets. It's not like we go super in depth, but there's a lot of zones. There's a lot of places essentially for people to get up and recreate and spread out and get away from it all and get away from other people. But the hard part is that starting point. And are there places for them to park or even get dropped off safely? So yeah, that's a big deal. And then, for us, and again, I think we're going to hit this a little bit more later, it goes well beyond that too. It goes beyond who gets the opportunity to access and the cost of access and whether you feel you're a sense of belonging or connection to that area. And those are things that we're definitely trying to work on as well with a couple of the equitable access programs that I think we're going to hit a little later.
Thanks. And on that note of access and barriers to specific places, Will, can you give us an update here? I've had a lot of conversations already about the frustrations around Mount Rainier National Park, and we're here locally. Can you give us the local context on that?
Yeah, I'll do my best. There's probably other people here who have even more knowledge than me. If you don't know, Mount Rainier, which we're pretty close to, in the winter only has one access point, which is Paradise on the south side. And historically, it's been a very important access point for backcountry and snow play and winter travel. It's high, which is important, like relatively high. It's 5,000 feet, okay? But in the Cascades, we only have so many high access elevation points, which is important because our precipitation falls mostly as rain until you get up to a certain elevation. So Paradise has historically been open 7 days a week as an access point, and it's very popular with families from Seattle and Tacoma, even far away as Portland, as well as Nordic skiers, snowshoers, backcountry skiers. But starting in about 2022, they reduced that to about 4 days a week, and it's oscillated 5 days, 4 days, kind of back and forth, pretty much like Friday through Monday now in the last several seasons. And on top of that, last year they closed down the snow play area, or like the sledding area, which again was like a big resource for families who would come. And being at Rainier in the winter is almost like can be like a mystical experience. It's just like a really powerful experience, and to be a family and have like a safe place to be is really important. So the reduction of those access infrastructure and just like general time has definitely been felt by the backcountry community, and that's largely due to kind of large systemic, we've been talking about all weekend, federal sort of things where the park simply can't staff everyone they need to keep the place open 7 days a week. I think last year they told us they had 26, jobs they wanted to fill to keep that infrastructure open, and there was 10 unfilled. So that's almost half of it, right? So if you don't have people to plow the roads and do the avalanche safety and that kind of stuff, it falls apart. And I'll kind of link that into Washington access in general. I kind of hinted at it. We only have so many high elevation access points. They're pretty much Paradise at Rainier, and then like the 4 major passes, Snoqualmie Pass, Stevens Pass, and then some dead end roads like Baker and Crystal. And one thing those all have in common besides Paradise is they are the site of ski areas. And ski areas control the majority of the parking in those locations. And historically, it was kind of a bit of a, I would say open handshake about who's parking where. But as all snow sports have increased in popularity the last few years, including downhill skiing, those ski areas have started to tighten the belt on their parking areas. And I'll give you an example. At the summit, Snoqualmie Pass, the ski area there has about 5,000 parking spots, give or take. There's about 500 publicly accessible non-ski area parking spaces, and about half of that is a paid snow park program. So you're talking about a very small percentage of parking at the closest, proximity to the Seattle metro area. So that's kind of like a little snippet of what Washington access issues look like.
Thanks. Megan, you've been in your role for a bit now, and you wear a number of hats for Winter Wildlands Alliance, but you've been in your community there for a really long time. What do you see in terms of like barriers and challenges to access here that maybe we didn't hit on or that we missed in this first trip through the panel?
Yeah, I think kind of going off what Will was talking about with like the parking issues and, all snow sports, people competing for parking spaces, that is definitely an issue with the snow play community, the families that want to come up that, can't afford to go to the ski area or do, the more expensive winter recreation opportunities. They don't know where to go. And so that creates even more conflict with the parking issues. You end up with people who just want a place to pull over and let their kids build a snowman or go sledding, parking in our backcountry trailhead parking lots. And it's not their fault because no one's telling them where to go. In the Sierra Nevada in California, there's the Central Valley with millions of people in the Bay Area where you get to look up at the snowy Sierra Nevada mountains, and a lot of those people have no idea how to access that safely. They don't know where to park. The most common thing we see is that they drive up the highway until they see the first sign of snow and the first place that they can pull over. And so a lot of times that's private property, or it's in places that are really unsafe. As my role as ambassador, I'm, traveling around the highway corridors, and the amount of times I've had to pull over and be like, hey folks, so I see you want to, have a barbecue and use your fire, like maybe have a little fire with your family. Maybe you should consider not doing that with your chair on over the white line of the highway. And I don't know if you realize this, but on your way up the hill, you actually passed an area that has restrooms and picnic tables and fire pits and 500 parking spots. And no one but snow players go there. It's not a backcountry access zone. So the lack of information, I feel, is a pretty big barrier for folks. And when I work closely with the local Forest Service staff, and one day I asked their lead interpretive staff, what do you guys say when someone calls your front office and asks oh, I want to come up and play in the snow, where can I go sledding? And her response was, we don't tell them where to go, we just tell them where not to go. We ask them to, be respectful of private property, don't sled towards the highway, park responsibly, but that's about all that they are giving these people. And these are the same people who have that area I'm describing where there's lots of parking, but even with that not being a publicized area, it's already overrun. They already don't have enough resources to maintain the amount of use that location receives. So I think that's another big barrier for folks that can't just hop online and look at the ski resort, or can't afford to go to one of the relatively expensive developed like sled hills. So yeah, that's something I've seen in this area.
Yeah, so from communications and information to cultural issues to some of the structural issues, I think I should probably pull us back from the brink now. And we were hoping that we'll have some sharing of solutions and innovations that may resonate with folks for you all to find some parallels in your community. And so let's move into just a discussion of some of that. Anthony, Tahoe Backcountry Alliance, you recently purchased. You did a program where you purchased snow park passes for families and had them available at local libraries so that folks could check those out for free. Can you tell us just a little bit about why you took that approach and how it worked out?
Sure. Yeah. So in California, and I'm guessing in a number of other states too, you could check out state park passes for free in your local libraries. There's nothing like that for winter, unfortunately. And we recognized a couple of years ago when the cost of snow park passes went from $5 to $15 for the day pass, tripling, and $25 to $40 for the annual, that, that alone is adding an additional barrier for many folks. So we looked at the possibility of working with libraries, and I'm seeing Dave Reichel again in the back right now. His amazing wife is a librarian at El Dorado County Library, and so we reached out to her to see if it was something that they might be open to doing, and it was a great kind of initial conversation, and of course they thought it was a really great idea. And so we did a pilot program with El Dorado County a couple of winters ago. It was really successful. People were checking it out. I think we were probably in 10 to 14 libraries throughout the county, not just in the Tahoe area, but just for people who live off the hill or might be driving through the foothill communities on their way up. And we saw that, okay, there was a need for it, there was a response. So we expanded that program last year to 2 additional counties. And we also then incorporated some of our other programs into this program. We do some work with kids programs, and I do think we'll hit that later. So I'm not going to go into the kids programs too much, but through that, we purchased cross-country gear and snowshoes, and we had additional snowshoes and poles, and so we reached out to one of the libraries, the Truckee Library, to see if they would be open to not just taking the snow park passes, but to be able to take some gear as well that people could check out for free. And they were open to that, and that was really successful as well. We saw that there was a demand for that. So it's all about learning, there's some trial and error here. We weren't really sure if people going to go to their local library, check out a snow park pass, check out snowshoes. Are they actually going to get used? And the answer was, yeah, they were. So this year we're going to be trying to expand even further and trying to go down to the Central Valley and the Bay Area and trying to hit some of those areas too, so people can think about accessing the snow who might not already be doing so.
And what were some of the numbers around that in terms of participation this past year and hopes for the coming year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say we were in the high hundreds, and this year we have every reason to think we'll probably be in the mid thousands in terms of usage with the expansion. Some of that is going to be grant dependent. We're waiting on 2 grants right now that will help supplement the cost for the snow park passes and some additional gear we want to buy, but it looks promising.
Yes, please.
I'm curious, Anthony, how did you reach out to those communities of newer users, or because I see this as a very possible viable solution, or thing we could do here in Washington. I'm curious kind of how you've reached those community.
We piggyback on the success of libraries. Libraries do a fantastic job of reaching their communities. I think much better than we could by ourselves, far and away. So, our social media reach is really reaching backcountry skiers and snowboarders for the most part. And then there's a little overlap, and we were able to get some information about this picked up by local newspapers. So that helped broaden it a little bit. But I think one of the things, and I think we've chatted about in kind of the pre-calls here, is the opportunities to go on to local radio stations and do PSAs. And that's something we haven't done before, but I think we will be doing this winter and going forward.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, partnership here in the nonprofit land, it's the way of things. But like in a similar vein, Cal, in your programs, you've put an emphasis on the mentorship, like the relationship building in that regard. And I just wonder if you could speak to that as is that a path forward for improving access for folks?
The foundation of any good mentorship was going to be earnest relationship building. And I'm sure with what Anthony's doing in his community of going to where the community members are going, the local libraries, that's like that is such a savvy approach to it, tactic to it, because it's increasing the scope, it's broadening the scope of how we are perceiving who is coming. And then when in combination with a more human-centric language and viewpoint of being on the landscape, can hopefully steepen that or increase the depth of which that mentorship can go. From there, it can blossom to be mentorship up and down and be a reciprocal mentorship process.
Thanks. Will, I know we wanted to talk about the snow park system. You already mentioned it, the scope and the scale of snow parks here in Washington, and we've talked. I've talked with a number of folks about just frustrations around the location, and in so many situations, feeling like they're not located in spots that are really ideal for backcountry skiers specifically. And but you all have been working on some ideas for improving that.
Yeah, well, I want to highlight that we think that Washington Snow Park program is a very successful program, and it's very robust here. It serves both motorized and non-motorized users, and the primary funding comes from both sale of day and season passes, as well as the motorized side comes from some other mechanisms, gas taxes, et cetera. But I think what you're alluding to is, I think historically the main user groups were more of the motorized community and like the cross-country community. And so those are different needs than like maybe the snow play or the snowshoers or the backcountry skiers. Backcountry skiers and snowshoers, we want relief. We want some verticality, which if you're a cross-country skier, maybe you want a little bit, but not quite the same. And then there's also like this growing contingent of just families and snow players who, as Megan alluded to, just want a place to like touch the snow. I've seen similar things where people come up from Seattle just to put their kids in a snowsuit, and they're just doing it right off the highway, and you just want such a better experience for them and for that kid. So we think that leveraging that snow park program and identifying like current underutilized infrastructure is a really great way to maybe add some access points that can address those needs. So specifically here in Washington, like we're looking at the Pacific Crest Trail trailhead at Snoqualmie Pass, which is an existing parking lot, very, very popular in the summer at Snoqualmie Pass, which, as I mentioned, is about an hour from the Seattle metro area, so very close to million plus people. And so we're working closely with the Forest Service to try to make that a reality. As always in these like multiple partner situations, there's a lot of people who use that space, and so trying to make sure that no one's getting forced out or feeling left out and that everyone's needs are being met is a complicated process. And in particular, it's complicated because the snow park program, while it's well funded, it usually happens on Forest Service land. So they need Forest Service agreement at the end of the day. And as we've said over and over, the Forest Service right now doesn't exactly have a ton of capacity to expend on non-critical operations. And so trying to paint the picture for them and convince the Forest Service that basically we'll take this off your hands. It's the snow parks program. They'll do the plowing. They'll provide the restrooms. So we're really working on trying to hammer that message home. And the other place that we're really focused on is Pilchuck, which is also a former ski area outside of Everett, which has a very large parking area, existing road, and would be like a really excellent place for families and like beginner backcountry winter enthusiasts to test their skills. And importantly, it would provide, currently if you live in that Everett metro area, you're driving at least 2 hours probably to snow, and Pilchuck would be under an hour. So you're just really increasing the access for people who maybe aren't willing to drive quite as far, or don't know where to go. So we're excited about that possibility, and it's something that we're working hard on. So
yeah, and the discussion around snow play areas, I know that's something that a lot of our organizations have been talking about. And Megan, you mentioned the informal snow play area that just gets going on the side of the road versus up at Pinecrest. You have more of an established area, although it's not officially a designated Forest Service snow play area. But if we're looking at that as a potential solution for just improving access for more people, like what do you think? Like what do we need? What do snow play areas need to become what they could be, or what they should be?
Yeah, I think the infrastructure in place for folks is really important. Having restrooms and trash receptacles is pretty critical. And then I think also the signage. So diverting a little bit to talk about some of the other solutions that we've done. Working with the local national forest, we've been working on some winter recreation brochures. So on the Lassen National Forest in particular, we're wrapping up with this brochure that describes all kinds of helpful information about how to recreate safely in the winter. Things that, first-time users are not gonna know, like, not wearing cotton, making sure that you bring gloves for your children, things that might seem simple to some of us, but things like checking the chain controls, knowing how to put chains on your car before you come up, and having that kind of information available at those sites as well is really helpful for establishing those areas and making sure that people know about those areas. So we have one on the Stanislaus National Forest, we have one non-motorized snow park, and it gets absolutely overrun with snow players. And there's maybe 30 parking spots maximum there if people park properly first thing in the morning. And so I've gone out on many tours where on the way out, it's peaceful and quiet, and then I get back to the last 100 yards, and it is like, I call it the gauntlet of, trying to not get hit in the head by a snowball or have a sled take me out as I'm trying to get back to the parking lot. So having a bit more separation of uses, I think, is really helpful. And that particular site I'm describing as well has very little avalanche potential, but the one small little gully that has avalanche potential in it is the place that the snow players tend to head towards. So having those snow play areas in places that have infrastructure, that people can get to them easily, they know that they're there, and that they're in places that make sense for snow play, as Will was describing. They don't need much of a hill for the kids to sled or build a snowman or any of those things. So, having separation of uses in those snow play areas, and not necessarily having them be having to try to share these parking areas and this terrain that's not necessarily the kind of terrain that they need.
Megan, sorry to jump in, Will, but
get in there.
In that zone where you're going out and you're having to deal with that gauntlet on your return, just one suggestion: in the morning on your way out, make a stash of snowballs, hide that, and then this way, when you're getting close, you're ready. Okay.
Oh yeah.
That was a way better comment than mine. I was gonna be all serious. I just wanted to piggyback because and I'm thinking about what Scott Shell said in the last panel, which is just that the resources for winter recreation just seem so paltry sometimes compared to summer recreation. And similarly, like Washington, we got some steep mountains, and they produce a lot of big avalanches. And I know it brings me strife and other professional strife when we see the families going out into the like prime backcountry ski zones, because you just worry about the educational level of those folks, and you want just like a much safer place for them to be. And so I think one of the other things that we're really trying to understand is, and I think it comes back to data, is like proving that there are people out here and they are engaging in this at this high level in this many places, and using that to help secure more funding, because it just comes down to like better support and better funding for those spaces.
Yeah, and one thing that we all talked about in our discussions beforehand, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention equipment and gear and clothing. And I know, Megan, you hinted at that in your last response there. But with the snow school program nationally, has been a key way that we've been able to introduce kids to their local winter wildlands, but not just introduce, but in a positive way. In order to have a great first time experience in the outdoors in the winter. Having snowshoes available for kids, and then if kids are coming up on a bus and they don't have gloves or snow pants or jackets, it's probably not going to be the most positive first time experience. And so having those things available on location in a lodge like this, so that you can outfit kids in a way that is going to lead to a great day, is definitely a big part of the equation in terms of reducing barriers. We've got a little space here before we were going to open it up to questions, but I'm wondering if there's anybody. You look like you want to chime in. Do it.
Yeah, there was something else that I wanted to mention about, we're talking about access for all, and these projects Winter Wildlands has been working on in collaboration with the Forest Service to come up with new trailhead signs, brochures, maps, and things like that. One of the efforts we've been putting in is trying to make sure that those things are available in multiple languages. And thankfully, some of our trailheads have self-service, so people can utilize QR codes, because obviously if you're trying to serve a broad population, it's kind of difficult to have signs in 5 different languages. But having QR codes, making sure that information is available at least online in multiple different languages, I think is another element of making sure that everyone has access to the information so they can engage in winter recreation safely and enjoyably.
That's such a beautiful segue into an idea I had with thinking about outdoors for all. I was thinking of immediately languages from all as well, and this with our languages is how we interpret the world, and that is like the cornerstone of how I aspire to run my mentorship. It's rooted in all these descriptive languages and words that every person is born with, that we can all describe snow in our own different ways. And once we can be encouraged to tap into that, then the learning can just become so much more smooth. Whereas a newcomer to the snow skis world is so inundated with, they don't know what skis are, they don't know I didn't know my boots had a walk mode for a year. No one told me. I didn't read the instructions, so I guess it's my fault. But once I was encouraged by, I forget who I was talking to, but it was Aiden Goldie who mentioned, he's this teacher down in Crested Butte, and he just gave me unlocked this different way of viewing snow and how to describe it, and it was just so transformative. And like, no, I do know it, I just don't know it in the way that I was told I had to know it. And so with increasing languages, we can move from translating what these environments have for us to interpreting what they have for us. And that is such an amazing process once we can do it.
So I just want to take advantage of the fact. So the photo up there right now is from one of our youth programs. We, a few years ago, partnered with the Washoe Youth Expedition Program, and I think there still may be some of the Outliers edition of the Backcountry magazine back there, but the article starts on page 56, and the same girl's right there is pictured in one of the photos that I got some shots here from him, and that's just been an amazing program, and it's been a great partnership. And I just kind of want to highlight, and this isn't specific to the Washoe program, but just the benefits for the kids. So the numbers are going to be from this program, but I think you can extrapolate this to the benefits for kids everywhere. Paula Smith, who the article is focused on, she's the youth expedition leader. She's also the juvenile probation officer for the Washoe tribe. And it ends up making a lot of sense because, she's with the kids that are kind of getting into trouble or kind of had the potential to get into trouble. And by providing these outdoor opportunities for the kids, the reduction in the amount of kids that are in trouble on probation went from 25 or 27 when she started down to 2 or 3 right now. And I think you can truly extrapolate that in a whole bunch of other areas. When kids have the opportunities to get outside and to do something healthy and fun and get that energy out that they need to get out, they're a lot less likely to be getting into trouble. And this program that we started was specifically like cross-country skiing and snowshoeing. And obviously that's really winter specific, but, recognizing that, there's a year-round need. I do a lot of mountain biking with the group as well, and some of their other TBA volunteers do too, including Brennan Lagasse, who is a WWA ambassador, and he's advisor board member for TBA, and he wrote the article here in Backcountry Magazine. And recognizing that you need to have these partnerships that go year-round in with these opportunities. And obviously, for a lot of us, winter is the focus, but when we can, try to piggyback either with other groups, hiking, trail running, mountain biking organizations, to make sure that there isn't a drop-off after the winter.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I just want to chime in real quickly there on something that Cal said and something that Megan was talking about with respect to integrating traditional ecological knowledge. Something we've been working on at Snow School with Snow School sites, partnering with local tribes to appropriately integrate place names and language for the winter world, and it's been a successful way to provide that context. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and it's something we're trying to make strides towards.
I want to ask Carrie a question real quick, because I think a lot of folks in this room may not realize quite how big the Snow School program is and the number of kids that you reach, and it's truly amazing. So if you could just speak to that for a sec.
You're turning the tables on me. Yeah. Snow School's we're into our 25th year of the program. It's one of the oldest Winter Wildlands Alliance programs, with the vision of connecting the next generation to wild snowscapes. And we added up all the numbers, and we're over 500,000 kids that we've engaged since the beginning. And the number of locations and communities that we're reaching is over 70 now. Last year, it was about 35,000 students went through Snow School. And those are in really different locations, places like Glacier National Park, or a small rural school district in Idaho, or nature centers scattered around the country. But it's been a way that we've had a positive impact, we feel like. So yeah, thanks for that question. I think on the note of questions, should we move to open it to the audience?
I just want to mention too, just an observation, the metric and the outcome that you talked about in this story is an example of what's not getting reported and built into appropriations with the U.S. Forest Service.
Thank you all. That was really interesting. My name's Jack. I come from Salt Lake City, and we're perpetually plagued by transportation issues getting from our city to our mountains. So I was curious if any of you had experience working with public transportation, like busing or shuttling, and getting people from urban environments up into snowy mountains.
So Tahoe Backcountry Alliance ran its own microtransit shuttle program for a few years, and it was specifically grant funded. And the goal of it wasn't, we're, as I mentioned earlier, one part-time employee, and we're not a transportation agency. So we were never going to move significant amount of people. Our goal with that program was to get local agencies, local governments, up to state government, recognizing the need for alternative ways for people to get to public lands. And we no longer run that program. Last year was our first year not running it because one, it is expensive and we lost that grant opportunity. But two, I think we finally recognized that we got what we were hoping to get out of it. People truly do recognize that there needs to be more money going to microtransit. And we do have some small scale programs going on both on the north and south shore of Lake Tahoe that are helping. They're nowhere near what's needed, but I think everyone at least recognizes what's needed and they're trying to figure out a path forward to get to that point. Like so many things, it's going to come down to funding, and this is not the ideal time, unfortunately, to scale up the way that things need to be scaled up. But there are some communities that I think that are models, including Mammoth, which I think does an incredible job with their bus system in terms of people being able to get to not just the ski resort, but to get to other public lands. And I think our region is learning from Mammoth and in some other areas as well.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the solution was just more gondolas, right? Wasn't that? Sorry, I had to. We're much further behind Tahoe Backcountry Alliance in this, but CBA is we are kind of poking at this a little bit, and right off the bat, you realize it's just so complicated. So I'll just give you one example at Snoqualmie Pass. So Snoqualmie Pass, I've mentioned a couple times already. It's about an hour from Seattle. It's split by county lines. So the west side is one county, the east side is the other county. And so that right away is a problem. So then you look at, okay, well, who's the transit authority on the west side? Okay, King County Transit Authority. Well, would they do that? And you start looking into that, and they're going to start taxing the residents in King County at Snoqualmie Pass. And those residents say, well, we don't want to be taxed for that. That's you sending people to our neighborhood to park in our driveways when they go to the trails. And so it is a really complex issue, but I think it's, as Anthony indicated, something that's going to become necessary to solve these problems, because no part of Cascade Backcountry Alliance thinks, oh, we'll just build more parking lots. You're never going to build your way out of that problem, right? So certainly some kind of solution, transit solution, whether it's some kind of microtransit or private partner, use the public transport to get them to North Bend, which is about 30 miles from the summit, and then use some kind of private or nonprofit solution from there, is kind of what we're looking at. But it's similarly, we have no full-time staff, and we're all volunteer board. And so trying to find right size our effort for that is also challenging, because we know we're not going to solve it all on our own. So sorry, no silver bullets there for you, but.
Well, even not so much about the silver bullets, but think about what's the right role for an organization like this to play in the innovation and implementation trajectory of a solution, right? So we just heard this, yeah, we lost the funding. Maybe you weren't supposed to keep the funding.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and I think one of the things organizations like TBA can do, and we are doing, is getting a foot in the door with. We have this thing called the Destination Stewardship Project in the Lake Tahoe region. So that brings together the visitors authorities, different nonprofits, whether they're environmentally focused or outdoors focused, the Forest Service, government agencies all together. And so we have meetings to discuss these things. And it's important that we're there. And frankly, we weren't just a few years ago. So I think that's where organizations like different backcountry alliances can get involved and make sure that, one, hopefully these things are taking place and you can just kind of nudge your way in and get a seat at the table. But if they're not taking place, then starting to talk to the people about, hey, we need to be having these conversations.
Yeah, I would add, Anthony described, the most popular ski zones in California. The Stanislaus National Forest is wedged between Yosemite and Tahoe, and we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth in use there as well. But interestingly, the local Tuolumne County Transit runs a ski bus in the winter, and it's only one bus, and it goes up the hill one time in the morning, and it comes down one time in the afternoon, and it only goes to the ski resort. But I think it's really interesting that, in this area that doesn't have the densest population, it's another one of those counties with a tremendous amount of federal land, so we don't have a huge tax base, but I imagine some of that advocacy is probably coming from the ski resort. I know a lot of the ski resort employees will use that bus as well to get there, but it is a county-funded program. So I think you raise a great point, and I think there's a lot of potential there for that to be a solution that a lot of us should be exploring.
I don't think you've asked one yet. All journey. Welcome.
As everybody else? Hey, I'm Alex. It sounds like there are a lot of really worthwhile initiatives in the works and at play to, alleviate some of these access issues and provide safer, higher quality experiences for all user groups. But my question's for Cal. What additional or new resources or partnerships could non-tribal organizations think about providing to help better serve your community?
To serve tribal communities?
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out too, my man. It's the context of the hurdles I'm facing is tribal communities. I'm speaking specifically about the Yakima Tribal Nation, who I've talked to some elders about. They think they are not ready for us to return back to these places because they are that generation of like 50, 60, 70. Their parents were in boarding schools and they were told they don't belong in these places. They are working through their own amount of internalized racism, whereas individuals like myself, Rachel Heaton, the Fenner crew, the Fenner family out on the Blackfeet Reservation, we are trying to unpack this trauma to move forward and say, hey, like, yes, we understand what you went through, and also, like, this is where we come from. I know this isn't the answer you're looking for. I want to give you one, though. I would say urban environments. I forget the statistic, but I'm pretty confident most enrolled tribal members in the country live off reservation in urban environments. And I would encourage all of us to look for where these urban centers are in the cities, to engage with them, but don't engage in the sense of, hey, I have this thing for you. First say, hey, I am interested, I do this thing, and I just want to be helpful. Come with an open plate for them and let them give you stuff first. That would be the best way. That's what I would do.
Thanks, man.
Anyone else? Thank you. Okay, right over here.
Really, this is for any of you. I know, Megan, obviously we've been working on this for a while, but you talked about signage, brochures, messaging. What about people on the ground? That's one of the things that has been a through line through a lot of the panels that as the Forest Service retreats, who's out there? I mean, people don't necessarily read signs. People, a brochure doesn't, a QR code sounds great. It's got 6 languages, but who's actually going to scan that? Who's out there actually meeting people and helping people interpret the landscape, helping people to feel welcome? How do we work on that?
Yeah, so this last winter was a pretty interesting exception on the Stanislaus. They had quite a few recreation staff and were able to have Forest Service rec people at snow parks, where as soon as you pull in, they chat with you. They give you advice about where to park, make sure you have your snow park permit. and do that kind of engagement. And so as ambassador on the Stanislaus, I was able to help them with that when, the lead of their program would just send me a text message if they knew they had a busy weekend coming up and one of their employees wasn't going to be able to help out. They would lean on me as the ambassador to come out and help. I still have some snow park permits from last season in the glove box of my truck from the times that I spent, just standing there at the entrance to the parking lot of the snow park, greeting those people, sharing information with them, things like that. So that is a program that WWA is working to expand. We have some volunteers. But it definitely also requires, collaboration with the Forest Service. They want to make sure that we're trained and we are sharing the right message with the public and all of those things. So having people on the ground really does make a big difference. And this coming winter, we have some grant money to put some more people on the ground on the Inyo and the Stanislaus, hopefully. So like I said, continuing to grow that program because having people on the ground and that in-person connection is really important because as David mentioned, it's great to have signs and making them more user-friendly, having maps on them that are actually easy to read and meaningful to people is really important. But having people there's nothing that compares to having people on the ground, so.
I know NWAC does X amount of boothing at trailheads. One thing I'm curious about, I would challenge our guide community here in Washington is if they could do a similar thing in partnering with a avalanche center. There's a ton of winter guiding that occurs in Washington, Colorado, and Utah, and that is a really complementary relationship to have. I know there's always in-town events that happen in Seattle, and I'm sure there's a lot of burgeoning potential that could blossom if we get the right minds together in the room.
One thing I'll share, I'm not a panelist, but I did just spend the last 4 years doing a research project in California with the U.S. Forest Service. And we were trying to help understand how to improve equitable access to the National Forest System. And we used mobile and rec.gov analytics overlaid with census to try and identify from what zip codes that are experiencing the highest growth of non-white communities, what does visitation look like from those zip codes into the National Forest System? And then we conducted interviews with thousands and thousands of people from those communities to try and understand how their experience could improve. Are they feeling welcome? Do they have and the things that we found was access to information about safety and what I can do with my family. And the things that they wanted to improve their experience was more information and stories about the forest. So not actually just safety information. It wasn't safety of people. Will I feel safe with different user groups or different cultures? It was safety around fire, ice, snow, right? Sort of some infrastructure stuff. So it was an information problem and a storytelling problem. But everybody said they felt welcome. And when they interacted with a Forest Service employee, they were like, it was awesome. They were super knowledgeable. They were really kind. Give me more of that. So if there's a staffing thing, what they were asking for was they loved learning about the Forest Service mission, the conservation stories, right? The shared purpose of it, and they wanted more of that. So, well, Forest Service doesn't have to be the only storyteller and connector of those things. Organizations right here that are mission aligned with that conservation ethos can also help be that welcoming presence to improve that outdoor experience. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Trailbreak Radio Season 2. If this conversation resonated with you, this is a moment to lean in and expand access to winter by helping us grow our alliance. Share with a friend, connect with us, and support our work by visiting winterwildlands.org. subscribing to our emails, and following us on social media to learn how Winter Wildlands Alliance inspires and empowers people to protect America's wild snowscapes.
Today's episode of Trail Break Radio was hosted by Winter Wildlands Alliance Policy Director Annika Williams and me, Emily Scott, Winter Wildlands Alliance's Operations Manager. It was edited by Adam Titmus.
And made possible by our panelists and our grassroots advocacy conference partners, Outdoor Alliance, REI Co-op, The Mountaineers, Duct Tape Then Beer and Dirtbag Diaries, High Country News, Freem Family Brewers, and our host, University of Washington's Pack Forest.
Our theme music is by Rattlesnake Preachers, featuring Winter Wildlands Alliance's Snow School Director, Carrie McClay. Additional music by Blue Dot Sessions.
In our next episode, we'll continue this conversation with a panel focused on mapping our future recreation zones. Thanks for listening and for carrying these perspectives with you into your favorite winter landscapes.